A hungry dog mother brought her cubs to a stranger's yard. What happened next is incredible. The cold wind howled through the empty streets as a frail, hungry dog limped through the alleyways. Her ribs pressed against her skin, and her eyes, full of desperation, kept darting around for food. But she wasn't just scavenging for herself. Behind her, 3 tiny puppies followed, shivering and whimpering with each step. After days of searching, she found herself at the gate of a stranger's house, a place she had never been before. The yard smelled of warmth, of food, of safety. But would the humans inside accept her? Would they chase her away like so many others had? With a deep breath, she nudged the gate open and led her cubs inside. The puppies collapsed onto the cold ground, their tiny bodies exhausted from hunger. The mother dog hesitated for a moment, then raised her head and let out a soft whimper, a plea for mercy. Inside the house, a young woman named Sarah was preparing dinner when she heard the faint cries. She walked toward the window and gasped. There, in her yard, was a mother dog with 3 starving puppies, their eyes filled with silent desperation. Without a second thought, Sarah rushed outside, her heart aching for the poor creatures. The mother dog tensed, prepared to defend her young, but when Sarah knelt down and held out a plate of food, the dog's ears perked up. She sniffed the air hesitantly, then in a moment of trust, took a bite. That night, Sarah brought them inside. She wrapped the puppies in warm blankets and fed them until their bellies were full. The mother dog watched her closely, her weary eyes slowly filling with gratitude. For the first time in weeks, she felt safe. Days passed, then weeks. The mother dog, now named Hope, grew stronger, and her puppies flourished under Sarah's care. They no longer had to search for food or shiver in the cold. They had found a home. What started as an act of desperation turned into an incredible story of kindness and trust. Hope had risked everything for her babies, and in return, she had found a family who would love her forever. Hope lay curled up on a soft blanket near the fireplace, her puppies nestled against her warm belly. It had been weeks since she wandered into Sarah's yard, and life had never felt so peaceful. But deep inside, she still carried the scars of her past, the fear of being abandoned again. One chilly evening, as Sarah sat on the couch watching the puppies play, she noticed something unusual. Hope stood near the door, ears perked up, staring outside. Her body was tense, as if she had sensed something. Sarah walked over and gently placed a hand on Hope's back. "What is it, girl?" she asked softly. Hope whined and scratched at the door. Sarah hesitated for a moment before opening it. The cold night air rushed in, and Hope bolted outside. Sarah's heart pounded as she grabbed a flashlight and followed. Hope ran through the dark streets, past empty houses and abandoned alleyways. Sarah struggled to keep up, calling after her, but the dog didn't stop. Finally, Hope slowed down near an old, broken-down shack. She sniffed the ground frantically, then let out a soft, sorrowful whimper. Sarah caught up, panting. She shined her flashlight toward the shack and gasped. There, in the shadows, was another dog. A frail, shivering dog, even skinnier than Hope had been when she first arrived. Its eyes were dull, filled with pain and exhaustion. Hope let out a low whine and approached the dog gently, licking its face as if comforting an old friend. Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes. Was this Hope's mate? A sibling? A friend from her past? Without hesitation, Sarah knelt beside them. "Come on, buddy," she whispered, reaching out a hand. The dog hesitated, then slowly crawled toward her, too weak to resist. Sarah carried the trembling dog back home, with Hope walking proudly beside her. The puppies greeted them with excited barks, wagging their tiny tails. That night, as Sarah placed another warm blanket near the fireplace, she realized something incredible. Hope hadn't just found a home, she had brought someone else to safety too. This wasn't just a rescue story. It was a story of love, of second chances, and of a mother's unbreakable spirit. The house was warm and peaceful, a stark contrast to the harsh world Hope and her new companion had once known. The frail dog, whom Sarah decided to name Shadow, was hesitant at first. He flinched at every sudden movement, his ribs pressing tightly against his thin skin. He had known only hunger and fear. Hope, however, stayed by his side, nudging him toward food and water. Her gentle licks reassured him that this was a safe place. The puppies, full of energy and mischief, climbed all over him, tugging at his ears and tail. Shadow flinched at first, but soon realized they meant no harm. For the first time in a long while, he wagged his tail. Sarah watched the scene unfold with a warm smile. Hope had not only found a home, but had also saved another lost soul. But deep inside, Sarah knew something. Their past still haunted them. What had happened to them before she found them? And more importantly, were they truly safe now? A mysterious past uncovered. Days turned into weeks, and Shadow began to regain his strength. His coat, once dull and patchy, started to shine under Sarah's care. He no longer flinched at sudden movements. Instead, he would press his head against Sarah's hand, seeking comfort. But one evening, as Sarah sat on the porch with Hope beside her, something strange happened. A white van slowly passed by her house, its headlights cutting through the dark. Hope stiffened. Her ears perked up, and a low growl rumbled in her throat. Sarah frowned. She had never seen that van before. It moved slowly, almost too slowly, as if someone inside was watching. Then, just as suddenly, it sped away into the night. Strange, Sarah murmured, stroking Hope's back to calm her. But deep down, unease settled in her chest. That night, Hope was restless. She paced the living room, ears twitching at every sound. Shadow, usually calm, also seemed on edge. The puppies, sensing their mother's unease, curled up close to her, whimpering softly. Then, in the dead of night, Sarah heard something, footsteps outside. Her heart pounded. She reached for her phone, carefully peeking out the window. A shadow moved near her fence. A man. He was looking toward the house, his face obscured by darkness. Sarah's grip tightened on her phone. Who was he? And why was he watching her house? A dark truth revealed. The next morning, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. She decided to take Hope and Shadow to the vet for a checkup just to make sure they were healthy. As she sat in the waiting room, she overheard a conversation between two staff members. Did you hear? Another illegal dog fighting ring was busted outside town last week, one of them whispered. Sarah's stomach dropped. Dog fighting. The very thought made her sick. When the vet examined Hope and Shadow, she noticed something concerning. These scars, she murmured, running her hand over Shadow's back. They look like old injuries from abuse or fights. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. Was that where they had come from? Had Hope escaped from a dog fighting ring, taking her puppies with her? The pieces began to fit together. Hope's fear, her desperation, the mysterious van, and the man outside her house, it all pointed to one chilling possibility. Someone had been looking for them. A battle for freedom. That night, Sarah double-checked all her locks, but she knew she couldn't just wait for something bad to happen. She had to act. She reached out to an animal rescue organization, telling them what she suspected. They agreed to help and even sent someone to investigate. Meanwhile, Sarah kept a close eye on the street. 2 nights later, the white van returned. But this time, Sarah was ready. She turned on all the porch lights and stepped outside with her phone, pretending to make a call. The van hesitated before speeding away. But Sarah had caught something, the license plate. She quickly reported it, and within days, the police tracked it down. They raided an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town, and what they found was horrifying. Cages. Dozens of them. Dogs in terrible condition, some barely alive. It was a dog-fighting operation, just as Sarah had feared. But the best part? The people running it were arrested, and the dogs were rescued. Hope and Shadow had unknowingly led Sarah to something bigger than just their own survival. They had helped save many more like them. A new beginning. With the danger finally behind them, life settled into a peaceful routine. Hope and her puppies thrived in their new home, and Shadow, once broken and afraid, had become a loving companion. Sarah knew she couldn't keep them all, but she made sure they found the best homes possible. Hope, however, would stay with her forever. One evening, as Sarah sat on the porch, watching the sunset, Hope curled up beside her, her tail wagging gently. "You saved them," Sarah whispered, scratching behind Hope's ear. "You saved so many." Hope licked her hand, her warm eyes filled with love. She had once been a lost, desperate mother searching for help. Now, she had everything she had ever needed. A home, a family, and most of all, a second chance at life. The past was behind them, but the scars still remained. Hope and her puppies had found safety in Sarah's home, and Shadow was no longer the frightened, starving dog she had rescued from the abandoned shack. But the memories of their suffering weren't so easily forgotten. Sarah had helped take down the dog fighting ring, but the thought of how many dogs had suffered still haunted her. She wanted to do more. One evening, as she sat with Hope curled up beside her, an idea took root in her mind. What if she turned her home into a sanctuary for dogs like Hope and Shadow? It was a crazy thought, but the more she considered it, the more it made sense. She had space, she had love to give, and most of all, she had Hope, who had proven time and time again that she understood the pain of the abandoned. A new mission begins. The next morning, Sarah began making calls. She contacted local animal shelters, asking if they had dogs in need of foster homes. The response was overwhelming. Shelters were overcrowded, and there were so many dogs who needed help. Within a week, Sarah had turned part of her backyard into a safe space for rescues. She built warm shelters, set up play areas, and made sure there was enough food for every new arrival. Hope and Shadow watched curiously as the first foster dogs arrived. Some were shy, others had visible wounds, both physical and emotional. But Hope seemed to understand them in a way no human could. She would approach gently, sniffing them, lying beside them as if to say, "I know what it feels like. You're safe now." Sarah was amazed at how quickly Hope became the heart of the sanctuary. She wasn't just a rescue dog anymore. She was a leader, a mother to all who needed comfort. An unexpected visitor. One evening, just as Sarah was finishing feeding the dogs, she noticed a car parked outside her home. A woman stepped out, her eyes scanning the yard with curiosity. "Can I help you?" Sarah asked, wiping her hands on her jeans. The woman smiled. "Are you Sarah? I heard about what you did, the rescue, the sanctuary. I wanted to meet you." Sarah frowned. "How did you hear about me?" The woman hesitated before pulling out a small envelope. "I think you should see this." Sarah took the envelope and opened it. Inside was an old photograph of a dog that looked almost exactly like Hope, same golden fur, same soulful eyes. But what shocked Sarah most was the writing on the back. "If found, please take care of her. She was never meant for that life." Sarah's breath caught in her throat. "Where did you get this?" The woman sighed. "I used to work for the man who ran that dog fighting ring. I tried to save as many as I could, but it wasn't easy. I took that picture when Hope was still a puppy. She was supposed to be trained for fighting, but she was different. She protected the weaker ones instead of attacking them. That's why they got rid of her." Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes. Hope had always been a protector. Even before she found Sarah, she had been saving others. A legacy of hope. That night, Sarah sat beside Hope, gently stroking her fur. "You were always meant to be a savior, weren't you?" she whispered. Hope wagged her tail, resting her head on Sarah's lap. Over the months that followed, Sarah's sanctuary grew. More dogs found their way to her doorstep, some injured, some abandoned, some simply lost. But no matter where they came from, they all found love within those walls. And at the heart of it all was Hope, the mother who had once carried her cubs to a stranger's yard, hoping for a miracle. She had found more than just safety. She had found a purpose. She had found home. Hope had come a long way from the starving, desperate mother who once wandered into Sarah's yard. She had not only found safety, but had helped build something bigger, a sanctuary for those who had suffered as she once did. With Shadow by her side, and her puppies growing stronger each day, life seemed peaceful. But fate had more in store. A mysterious arrival. One rainy night, as thunder rumbled in the distance, Hope sat by the porch, watching the falling raindrops. Sarah was inside preparing food for the growing number of rescue dogs when suddenly, Hope let out a deep, low growl. Sarah turned, her heart pounding. Hope rarely growled unless something was wrong. She quickly grabbed a flashlight and stepped outside. At the edge of the yard, just beyond the fence, a dark figure moved. Sarah's grip tightened on the flashlight. "Who's there?" she called out. There was silence. Then, a weak whimper broke through the sound of the rain. Sarah's heart clenched. That wasn't a person, it was a dog. She hurried toward the gate, Hope following closely. As she got closer, the flashlight beam revealed a sight that made her stomach drop. A large dog, soaked from the rain, lay curled up in the mud. He was a German shepherd, his fur matted and covered in cuts. His ribs were visible, and his eyes, filled with pain, met Sarah's for just a moment before he let out a weak sigh and collapsed. Sarah dropped to her knees. "Oh no. Hold on, buddy." Hope stepped forward, sniffing the new arrival. She let out a soft whine and nudged the dog gently, as if telling him to stay awake. Sarah wasted no time. She carefully lifted the injured dog and carried him inside. A battle for survival. The next few hours were tense. Sarah cleaned his wounds, wrapped him in blankets, and stayed by his side. She could tell he had been through something terrible. His body bore the signs of past fights, scars, torn ears, and deep bruises. Shadow watched from a distance, his eyes filled with understanding. He too had once been in that condition. Hope lay down beside the injured dog, resting her head near his, offering silent comfort. For the next 3 days, the shepherd, whom Sarah named Titan, barely moved. He was too weak to stand, too exhausted to eat much. But he was alive. Then, on the 4th day, something incredible happened. As Sarah placed a bowl of food near him, Titan lifted his head slightly. His eyes, once dull, had a spark of determination. With a shaky effort, he tried to push himself up. Hope stood beside him, watching closely. When Titan's legs trembled, she pressed her body against his, steadying him. It was a small moment, but Sarah knew Titan had chosen to fight. The shadows of the past. As Titan grew stronger, his past slowly began to reveal itself. Unlike Hope and Shadow, he wasn't just a stray. One evening, as Sarah brushed through his fur, she noticed something hidden beneath his thick coat, a faded tattoo on his ear. Her heart sank. Titan had belonged to someone. Curious and uneasy, Sarah took a picture of the marking and sent it to the local animal rescue network. Within hours, she got a response. The message sent shivers down her spine. Titan was reported stolen from a K9 unit 2 years ago. Sarah's hands trembled as she read further. Titan had once been a police dog in training, but he had disappeared during a raid on an illegal operation. The assumption was that he had been taken and forced into fights. A deep anger burned in Sarah's chest. He had once been a hero, but instead of protecting people, he had been used for violence. The question now was, did he still have a home to return to? A choice to make. Sarah contacted the authorities, explaining Titan's situation. The officer on the other end of the line was silent for a moment before saying, "We've been searching for Titan for 2 years. But if he's safe and happy with you, maybe it's best he stays." Sarah looked over at Titan, who was lying with Hope and Shadow, a peaceful look on his face. He had found a family here. The officer sighed. "Let's meet and discuss his future. We want what's best for him." A week later, a police officer named Jake arrived at Sarah's home. He had been Titan's original handler before he was stolen. The moment he stepped out of his car, Titan lifted his head, ears perked up. For a moment, there was silence. Then, Titan slowly stood up and walked toward Jake. The officer knelt down, his eyes glassy with emotion. "Hey, buddy," Jake whispered, reaching out. Titan sniffed his hand, his tail wagging slightly. Sarah watched, her heart conflicted. She had grown attached to Titan, but she knew he had a history, a bond with this man. Then, to everyone's surprise, Titan turned and walked back toward Hope and Shadow, sitting beside them. He looked at Jake, then at Sarah, his choice clear. Jake smiled, though there was sadness in his eyes. I think he's already found his new home. Sarah felt tears prick at her eyes. Are you sure? Jake nodded.
Yeah.
He's happy here. And after everything he's been through, he deserves to stay with the family he chose. A new beginning. Titan never returned to the K-9 unit, but his story didn't end there. He became a guardian of the sanctuary, always looking after the new rescues that arrived. If a frightened dog needed comfort, he was there. If Sarah needed help breaking up playful fights between puppies, he stepped in. Hope, Shadow, and Titan had formed an unbreakable bond. 3 dogs from different pasts, united by survival and love. And as Sarah looked around at the growing sanctuary, at the lives being saved, she realized something. This wasn't just a shelter anymore. It was a family. A place where the lost were found, the broken were healed, and second chances were given freely. And it had all started with a hungry dog mother and her desperate search for help. The sanctuary had grown beyond anything Sarah had ever imagined. What had started as a desperate act of kindness, taking in Hope and her puppies, had now turned into a haven for dogs who had suffered neglect, cruelty, and abandonment. Titan had become the quiet protector of the sanctuary, Hope remained the loving mother figure, and Shadow had fully embraced his role as the gentle, watchful companion. The puppies, now bigger and full of life, ran freely through the yard, playing with the new rescues that came in. But just when Sarah thought life had settled into a peaceful routine, an unexpected challenge arrived, one that would test everything she had built. A dog in chains. One afternoon, as Sarah was unloading bags of dog food from her truck, she heard a strange sound, whimpering, but it wasn't coming from the sanctuary. She turned her head toward the road. There, near the fence line, stood a young boy, no older than 12, holding the leash of a large, battered-looking Rottweiler. The dog's body was covered in scars, and a heavy chain wrapped around its neck. Sarah's heart clenched. "Hey there," she said gently, approaching the boy. "Is that your dog?" The boy looked down, hesitating.
No.
"He belongs to my uncle. But I don't want him to." Sarah crouched down, speaking softly. "What do you mean?" The boy swallowed hard. He hurts him. He makes him fight." Sarah's breath hitched. Another fighting dog. The boy looked up, his eyes filled with worry. "I heard about you. People say you help dogs. Can you take him?" Sarah looked at the Rottweiler. His dark eyes were filled with exhaustion and pain, but there was no aggression in them, only silent pleading. She nodded. "I'll take care of him." Relief flooded the boy's face. He hurriedly unfastened the chain from the dog's neck and handed it to Sarah. "Please don't let him go back." "I won't," Sarah promised. The boy ran off before she could ask any more questions. She looked down at the Rottweiler. His body was tense, but he didn't resist as she led him inside. Hope and Titan immediately took notice. Titan, once a victim of fighting, stepped forward carefully, his body language calm but firm. Hope followed, her tail wagging slightly. The Rottweiler, unsure of what was happening, lowered his head and sat down. "You're safe now," Sarah whispered, stroking his scarred back. "No one's going to hurt you ever again." She named him Bruiser, a tough name for a dog who had survived so much. The threat returns. As days passed, Bruiser adjusted to sanctuary life. He was hesitant, afraid of loud noises, and flinched when people moved too quickly. But he wasn't aggressive. In fact, he seemed to crave affection, as if he had never known kindness before. Sarah was just beginning to feel hopeful about his progress when something happened that sent chills down her spine. Late one evening, she heard a loud noise outside the sanctuary. A car had pulled up near the fence, and 2 men were standing by the gate. Sarah's stomach twisted. She stepped onto the porch, flashlight in hand. "Can I help you?" she called out, keeping her voice firm. One of the men stepped forward. He was tall, muscular, and had a cruel smirk on his face.
"Yeah.
"We're looking for a dog. A big Rottweiler. Seen him?" Sarah's grip tightened on the flashlight. "Why do you ask?" "He belongs to my brother," the man said. "Kid must have brought him here. We want him back." Sarah's heart pounded, but she kept her face calm. I don't have any stolen dogs here. Every animal in my care was surrendered legally. The second man scoffed. That dog ain't yours to keep, lady. Before Sarah could reply, a low, menacing growl rumbled through the darkness. He stepped onto the porch beside Sarah, his massive frame blocking her from view. His ears were forward, teeth bared, and his usually calm eyes burned with a warning. Hope stood beside him, silent but alert. Shadow and Bruiser appeared behind them, forming a protective wall between Sarah and the men. The first man narrowed his eyes. You think those might scare us? Sarah took a step forward. They should. And if that's not enough, the police will. She pulled out her phone, her thumb hovering over the dial screen. The men exchanged a look. They clearly weren't expecting resistance. Suit yourself, the first man muttered. But you haven't seen the last of us. They climbed back into the car and sped away, leaving Sarah shaken. She turned to the dogs, her heart swelling with gratitude. Good job, guys. Titan's tail wagged slightly. Hope nuzzled her hand. Bruiser, for the first time, lifted his head proudly. They had protected her, just as she had protected them. Justice for the forgotten. Sarah knew the men would come back. She had to act fast. The next morning, she contacted the authorities and reported the attempted theft. She also reached out to an undercover investigator who worked on shutting down illegal dog fighting rings. A week later, the police raided a hidden property outside town. What they found was horrific: cages filled with abused dogs, evidence of fights, and a group of men running the operation. The authorities arrested everyone involved. Among them was the man who had come looking for Bruiser. But the best part? The dogs were rescued. Many of them were too damaged to return to normal homes, but Sarah made a decision. Her sanctuary would take in as many as she could. Hope, Titan, Shadow, and Bruiser welcomed them with open hearts. Dogs who had known nothing but pain slowly learned what love felt like. And Sarah knew, now more than ever, that her mission had only just begun. The sanctuary grows. Months passed, and the sanctuary expanded. Donations poured in after Sarah's story spread, and with the help of volunteers, she was able to build more space for rescues. Bruiser transformed from a fearful, broken dog into a gentle giant, playing with puppies and watching over the more timid dogs. Shadow remained Sarah's quiet companion, always by her side. Titan continued his role as the sanctuary's guardian, making sure everyone was safe. And Hope? She was the heart of it all. One day, as Sarah sat on the grass, watching the dogs play, she felt a nudge against her shoulder. Hope. Sarah smiled and wrapped her arms around her. We did it, girl. We saved them. Hope licked her cheek, her warm brown eyes filled with the love that had started everything. A starving mother dog had once wandered into a stranger's yard, looking for hope. Now, she had become hope for countless others. And she always would be. The sanctuary was no longer just a place, it was a home. What had started as an act of kindness had blossomed into something extraordinary. Hope, Titan, Shadow, and Bruiser had not only found safety, but had helped create a family for the lost and broken. But life has a way of testing even the strongest bonds. One cold winter evening, just as Sarah was closing up the kennels for the night, she received a call that would change everything. The cry for help. Sarah? The voice on the other end was shaky. It was Lisa, a fellow animal rescuer from a nearby town. There's a situation, Lisa continued. A hoarder's been found with over 40 dogs locked in a barn. No food, no water. Some of them, they might not make it. Sarah's chest tightened. Where are they now? The authorities shut the place down, but the shelters are full. They're looking for places to take the dogs. I thought of you. Sarah didn't hesitate. Send them here. She hung up, adrenaline kicking in. 40 dogs. It was more than she had ever taken in at once, but she couldn't turn them away. She ran to the barn where she kept extra supplies. Titan and Bruiser followed her, sensing the urgency. We have work to do, boys, she whispered. By the time Lisa and the rescue team arrived with the dogs, Sarah had already set up temporary shelters, laid out blankets, and prepared food. When the van doors opened, Sarah's heart broke. Thin, terrified dogs huddled together, their eyes dull from starvation. Some were barely able to stand. Hope walked forward slowly, her tail wagging in reassurance. She sniffed a trembling beagle and lay beside him, offering silent comfort. Shadow stayed close, observing, ready to step in if needed. One by one, the dogs were brought inside, and the long process of healing began. The silent survivor. Among the rescue dogs was one that stood out, a massive Great Dane, too weak to walk on his own. His ribs showed through his black coat, and his eyes, though tired, held a quiet resilience. Sarah knelt beside him. "Hey, big guy," she whispered, stroking his head. "You're safe now." She named him Atlas, because despite his weakened state, he carried the weight of survival in his soul. For weeks, Atlas barely moved. He ate only when Sarah sat beside him, speaking softly, assuring him he wasn't alone. Hope often curled up next to him, and Titan would sit nearby, as if keeping watch. Then one morning, something incredible happened. Sarah walked outside to find Atlas standing on shaky legs. He took one step, then another, and then, for the first time, he wagged his tail. Tears filled Sarah's eyes. "You did it," she whispered. Hope barked, and Titan gave Atlas a nudge of encouragement. The sanctuary had given him a reason to fight. A dark shadow returns. Just as things were settling, trouble found its way back to the sanctuary. One evening, as Sarah was checking the fences, she noticed something strange: footprints in the snow near the back of the property. Her stomach twisted. Someone had been watching. That night, she kept a light on and made sure the dogs were close. Titan and Bruiser, sensing something was wrong, patrolled the property. Hope stayed near Sarah, her protective instincts on high alert. Then, at midnight, the sound of an engine broke the silence. Sarah rushed to the front porch. A dark van was parked at the edge of her driveway, its headlights off. Fear gripped her. She knew who it was. The dog-fighting ring might have been shut down, but some of its members were still out there. And they wanted something back. Titan growled, low in his throat. Shadow and Bruiser flanked Sarah as she reached for her phone. Before she could dial, the van sped away. But she knew it wasn't over. Tears filled Sarah's eyes. "You did it," she whispered. Hope barked, and Titan gave Atlas a nudge of encouragement. The sanctuary had given him a reason to fight. A dark shadow returns. Just as things were settling, trouble found its way back to the sanctuary. One evening, as Sarah was checking the fences, she noticed something strange: footprints in the snow near the back of the property. Her stomach twisted. Someone had been watching. That night, she kept a light on and made sure the dogs were close. Titan and Bruiser, sensing something was wrong, patrolled the property. Hope stayed near Sarah, her protective instincts on high alert. Then, at midnight, the sound of an engine broke the silence. Sarah rushed to the front porch. A dark van was parked at the edge of her driveway, its headlights off. Fear gripped her. She knew who it was. The dog-fighting ring might have been shut down, but some of its members were still out there. And they wanted something back. Titan growled low in his throat. Shadow and Bruiser flanked Sarah as she reached for her phone. Before she could dial, the van sped away. But she knew it wasn't over. The fight for freedom. The next morning, Sarah contacted the authorities, and security was increased around the sanctuary. Volunteers and supporters rallied behind her, offering help and protection. The sanctuary was no longer just a shelter, it was a symbol. A place where the abused found safety, where the forgotten found love. And the people who thrived on cruelty? They were losing. Days turned into weeks, and the sanctuary continued to grow. Donations poured in, new dogs were rescued, and one by one, the broken souls found healing. Atlas became a gentle giant, often seen playing with the puppies. Hope remained the heart of the sanctuary, always the first to welcome newcomers. Titan never stopped watching over them. And Bruiser, once a victim of violence, had become a protector of the weak. Sarah stood at the edge of the property one evening, watching the sun set over the fields. Hope sat beside her, leaning against her leg. "We did it," Sarah whispered, running a hand through Hope's golden fur. Hope lifted her head, eyes filled with quiet understanding. They had turned pain into purpose, suffering into strength, loss into love. And as long as Sarah had breath in her body, she would keep fighting for those who had no voice. Because it had all started with one hungry dog mother. And now it would never end. The sanctuary had become more than just a safe haven. It was a place of transformation. Every dog that arrived carried a story, some filled with suffering, others with hope. And yet, no matter how broken they were, each one found a family here. Sarah had saved hundreds of dogs over the past year, but she knew that every rescue came with risks. The men who had tried to take Bruiser had disappeared for now, but the footprints near the sanctuary fence still haunted her. Someone was watching, and soon she would find out why. The mysterious stray. One chilly morning, Sarah was feeding the dogs when she noticed something unusual. Near the back fence, just beyond the tree line, stood a lone dog. It wasn't one of hers. The dog was large, possibly a mix of a husky and a shepherd, with thick black fur and piercing blue eyes. He stood perfectly still, watching. Sarah took a slow step forward. "Hey there, buddy," she called softly. The dog didn't move. Hope, sensing something strange, trotted over and sniffed the air. Titan followed, standing tall beside Sarah. For a long moment, the strange dog held their gaze. Then, without warning, he turned and vanished into the woods. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Who was he? And why did it feel like he had been there before? Signs of trouble. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. The encounter with the mysterious dog replayed in her mind. There was something odd about him. He hadn't looked scared or lost. He had looked aware, like he was watching over something. The next morning, she decided to investigate. She followed the path where the dog had stood, leading into the thick woods behind her sanctuary. Titan and Shadow walked beside her, their ears alert. About 20 minutes in, she noticed something strange. A makeshift camp. It was abandoned, but the signs were clear. Someone had been staying there recently. The remains of a fire pit, empty food wrappers, and old blankets were scattered across the ground. Sarah's heart pounded. Was someone living out here? And if so, why? Before she could look closer, a rustling sound made her freeze. From the shadows, the black-furred dog emerged again. He stood just a few feet away, staring at her with those intense blue eyes. Sarah took a cautious step forward. "Are you lost?" The dog didn't move. Then, just as quickly as before, he turned and disappeared into the forest. A hidden past. Determined to get answers, Sarah returned to the sanctuary and contacted Lisa, her friend in animal rescue. "Can you check if any dogs matching this description have been reported missing?" Sarah asked. "I'll see what I can find," Lisa replied. Hours later, Sarah's phone rang. "You're not going to believe this," Lisa said, her voice filled with urgency. "That dog, you might be dealing with something much bigger than you thought." Sarah gripped her phone. "What do you mean?" "There's a missing person case tied to a dog that looks just like the one you described." Sarah's breath caught in her throat. "What?" Lisa continued. "A military veteran named Daniel Foster disappeared 6 months ago. He was last seen hiking in the woods with his service dog, a husky shepherd mix named Echo." Sarah's mind raced. A missing man. A dog that kept appearing near her sanctuary. Could Echo still be looking for his owner? A desperate search. Sarah wasted no time. She reached out to the authorities and reported her sightings of Echo. If Daniel was still out there, lost or in danger, they had to find him. Search teams arrived the next day. Sarah led them to the abandoned camp, and within minutes, the dogs picked up a scent. As the search party moved deeper into the forest, Echo suddenly appeared again. But this time he didn't run. Instead, he barked. Once. Twice. Then he turned and bolted, looking back as if telling them to follow. Sarah's heart pounded. He's leading us to something. She and the team followed Echo as he weaved through the trees. After several minutes, They reached a steep ravine, and at the bottom, a man lay motionless. Daniel Foster. The rescue. The team sprang into action. Daniel was alive but weak, dehydrated, and injured. It was clear he had been surviving off the land, but he was in desperate need of medical attention. As the rescue team lifted him onto a stretcher, Echo never left his side. The bond between them was undeniable. Sarah watched in awe as Daniel slowly opened his eyes, his gaze landing on Echo. A weak smile formed on his lips. "You found me, boy," he whispered. Tears burned in Sarah's eyes. Echo hadn't been lost. He had been searching for his best friend all along. A new beginning. Daniel recovered in the hospital, and Echo never left his side. When Sarah visited, Daniel took her hand. "Thank you," he said sincerely. "If it weren't for you, I don't think I would have made it." Sarah shook her head. "It was Echo. He never gave up on you." Daniel nodded, his eyes filled with emotion. "He's more than just a dog. He's my family." After weeks of recovery, Daniel and Echo returned home, their bond stronger than ever. Sarah knew she had been part of something incredible, not just a rescue, but a reunion of two souls meant to be together. As she returned to the sanctuary, Hope greeted her with a wagging tail, as if sensing that something wonderful had happened. Sarah knelt beside her. "Another life saved," she whispered. And she knew, without a doubt, that she would never stop fighting for them. The lost, the forgotten, the ones searching for home. Because the sanctuary wasn't just for animals. It was for anyone who needed a second chance. The sanctuary had become a place of miracles. Dogs who had once known only pain and fear were now thriving under Sarah's care. Bruiser, the once abused Rottweiler, had transformed into a gentle guardian. Titan remained the fearless protector. Hope, the dog who had started it all, continued to nurture every new arrival as if they were her own. But with each new rescue, Sarah felt the weight of responsibility grow heavier. The sanctuary had expanded beyond her expectations, but so had the challenges. The threats from the past still lingered in the shadows, and now, with winter approaching, a new battle was about to begin, one that would test Sarah's strength like never before. A winter of struggles. The first heavy snowfall of the season arrived suddenly, blanketing the sanctuary in white. It was beautiful but dangerous. Food supplies were running low, and the roads leading to town were nearly impassable. Sarah had prepared as much as she could, but she hadn't expected the storm to hit so soon. She bundled up in layers and stepped outside, her breath turning to mist in the freezing air. Titan and Shadow followed her closely, their large frames cutting through the snow with ease. Hope stayed inside the barn with the smaller dogs, keeping them warm. Sarah's main concern was the rescue kennels at the far end of the property. Some of the newest arrivals were still too weak to handle the cold, and she needed to ensure they were safe. She reached the kennels and did a quick head count. Bruiser was standing tall, watching over a group of rescued strays. Atlas, the Great Dane, lay curled up with a trembling Labrador mix, sharing his warmth. Sarah smiled despite the cold. "Good boy, Atlas," she murmured, scratching behind his ears. But as she was about to head back inside, she heard something. A faint, distant howl. Her breath caught. It wasn't one of her dogs. It was coming from the woods. The stranger in the snow. Sarah knew better than to ignore an animal in distress. She grabbed a flashlight and followed the sound, her boots sinking into the deep snow. Titan walked beside her, his ears perked and body tense. He sensed something was off. As she moved deeper into the woods, the howling grew louder. Then she saw it, a dark shape lying in the snow near a fallen tree.
A dog.
Sarah rushed forward, kneeling beside the animal. It was a husky mix, his thick fur covered in ice. His breathing was shallow, his body barely responsive. "Oh no," Sarah whispered, quickly checking him for injuries. His paw was caught between the roots of the fallen tree, and his ribs stuck out from hunger. Titan sniffed the husky and let out a soft whine. "We've got to get him back," Sarah said. She carefully freed the dog's paw and lifted him into her arms. He was light, too light. He had been starving for a long time. As she carried him back to the sanctuary, she noticed something strange. The husky wore a torn collar, and faintly, she could make out a name engraved on the tag. Ghost. Ghost's secret. Back at the sanctuary, Sarah wrapped Ghost in blankets and set up a heater to warm him. Hope immediately curled up beside him, licking his face gently. Titan sat nearby, watching. After a few hours, Ghost stirred. His blue eyes flickered open, filled with exhaustion and something else. Fear. Sarah reached out a hand. It's okay, Ghost. You're safe now. The husky flinched at first, but then his nose twitched, taking in the scent of the other dogs. Slowly, his body relaxed. Sarah gave him food and water, but as she watched him, a sinking feeling grew in her chest. This dog hadn't just been lost. He had been running from something. Shadows from the past. The next morning, Sarah contacted Lisa again. Can you check if a husky named Ghost has been reported missing? Lisa didn't hesitate. I'll look into it. Hours later, she called back. Sarah, this is bad. Sarah braced herself. Tell me. Ghost belonged to a family in a nearby town, but he was stolen months ago. Stolen. Sarah repeated, her blood running cold. Lisa continued. He was taken along with several other dogs. There's been a string of thefts lately. Some kind of illegal dog smuggling ring. Sarah's stomach twisted. She had heard of dog thieves selling stolen pets to underground breeders or worse, fighting rings. Ghost had escaped. But from where? And who was behind it? As Sarah hung up the phone, a noise outside made her freeze. The crunch of footsteps on snow. She turned toward the window. A dark figure stood near the edge of her property, just beyond the tree line. Watching. Waiting. The threat returns. Sarah's heart pounded. She grabbed a flashlight and stepped outside, Titan and Bruiser immediately flanking her. Who's there? She called out. The figure didn't move. Titan let out a deep, threatening growl. The figure hesitated, then turned and disappeared into the trees. Sarah exhaled sharply. She knew now. Ghost hadn't just been running from starvation. He had escaped from the people who had stolen him. And they wanted him back, a dangerous game. The next few days were tense. Sarah increased security around the sanctuary. Volunteers and neighbors helped reinforce fences. The police were notified. But Sarah knew the thieves wouldn't give up so easily. One night, as she checked the kennels, she heard something, metal clanking near the back gate. Someone was trying to break in. Sarah's pulse raced. She reached for her phone. But before she could call for help, Titan and Bruiser launched forward with deafening barks. A man cursed and stumbled back. Then Ghost appeared. The husky sprinted toward the intruder, his blue eyes blazing with fury. For a moment, the man froze. Then he turned and ran, disappearing into the night. Sarah's hands shook as she pulled her dogs back. This wasn't over. Justice for Ghost. Sarah worked quickly. She called Lisa and the authorities, sharing what had happened. A full investigation was launched, and within weeks, the truth was uncovered. Ghost had led them straight to a hidden operation, an illegal network of dog smugglers. With the help of law enforcement, the ring was dismantled. Many stolen dogs were found, some barely clinging to life. But they were saved. And Ghost? He had found his way home. A home for the lost. With the smugglers behind bars, the sanctuary finally found peace again. Ghost, despite being offered the chance to return to his original owners, had chosen to stay. He had found his new pack. Sarah watched as he ran across the snowy fields, playing with Titan and Bruiser. Hope sat beside her, her tail wagging gently. The sanctuary had been tested again and again, but each time, love had won. Sarah knelt beside Hope, wrapping an arm around her. We'll always fight for them, she whispered. Hope licked her cheek, her eyes filled with understanding. And so the sanctuary continued, one rescue, one miracle, one act of kindness at a time, because it had all started with one hungry dog mother. And now it would never end. The sanctuary had faced many battles, harsh winters, cruel men, and the painful pasts of the animals it sheltered. But no matter the hardship, Sarah had never given up. Hope, the dog who had started it all, still watched over the sanctuary like a guardian angel. Bruiser, the once abused Rottweiler, had become the protector of the pack. Titan remained ever vigilant, always sensing danger before it arrived. And now, with Ghost joining the family, the sanctuary had grown stronger than ever. But peace never lasted long, and the storm that was about to come would test them all. The vanishing strays. It started with whispers. Lisa called one evening, her voice heavy with concern. "Sarah, something's happening in the next town over." Sarah put down her tea. "What is it?" "Stray dogs are disappearing." Sarah frowned. "You mean getting adopted?" "No," Lisa said quietly. "They're vanishing. No bodies, no signs. Just gone." Sarah's heart tightened. The memory of Ghost's past, of the smugglers, the stolen dogs, the underground trade, came rushing back. "What do you think is happening?" Sarah asked. Lisa hesitated. "I don't know yet, but something feels off. And I have a feeling it's not over." Sarah exhaled slowly. "Let me know if you hear anything else." But deep inside, she already knew. This wasn't over. A visitor in the night. A week passed, and things at the sanctuary seemed normal, until the night the stranger arrived. It was past midnight when Titan began growling at the door. Shadow, always silent and watchful, stood stiffly beside him. Sarah rubbed her tired eyes. "What is it, boys?" Then she heard it. A knock. It was soft but deliberate. Someone was at the sanctuary gate. Grabbing her coat, Sarah stepped outside. The night was cold, and the air carried an eerie silence. Hope followed her, ears perked. At the gate stood a man. He was tall, wrapped in a dark coat, his hands tucked into his pockets. His face was partially hidden beneath a hood. Sarah kept her distance. "Can I help you?" The man lifted his head slightly, revealing tired eyes. "Are you Sarah?" She hesitated. "Who's asking?" The man sighed. "My name is Evan. I need your help." Sarah studied him carefully. "Help with what?" He glanced around as if afraid someone was watching. "My dog, he's missing." Sarah's heart softened slightly. "What happened?" Evan exhaled. "He was taken." Sarah's stomach dropped. "Taken?" Evan nodded. "By the same people who took Ghost." "The hunt begins." Sarah led Evan inside, offering him a cup of tea. The fire crackled softly, casting flickering shadows on the walls. Evan sat quietly, his hands wrapped around the warm cup. Then he spoke. "My dog's name is Ranger," he said. "A German Shepherd. He's been with me for 6 years. 2 weeks ago, he disappeared." Sarah leaned forward. "You think it's the same smugglers?" Evan nodded. "They may have shut down that ring, but they weren't the only ones. There's a bigger operation, one that never stopped." Sarah swallowed hard. "Do you know where they are?" Evan hesitated, then reached into his pocket, pulling out a crumpled piece of paper. He slid it across the table. Sarah unfolded it and felt a chill creep up her spine. It was a map, and marked in red was a location deep in the forest. "They're keeping them here," Evan said. Sarah looked up. "How do you know this?" Evan's jaw clenched. "Because I used to work for them." The plan. Evan told her everything. He had once been part of an underground operation that stole, bred, and sold dogs for illegal fights and trafficking. But after witnessing the horrors firsthand, he had walked away, something not many people lived to do. Now, the people he had betrayed wanted him dead. But before he vanished for good, he needed to save Ranger. Sarah listened, her hands tightening into fists. She had spent years rescuing dogs from pain and suffering, but hearing the full extent of the cruelty made her blood boil. "We have to stop them," she said. Evan nodded. "But we can't do it alone." Sarah thought for a moment. Then she grabbed her phone. It was time to call in reinforcements. The rescue mission. The next night, Sarah, Evan, Lisa, and a few trusted volunteers met near the location marked on the map. The forest was dense, the air thick with tension. Evan led the way, moving silently through the trees. Then, in the distance, They saw it, an old warehouse hidden deep in the woods. Faint lights glowed from within, and shadows moved behind the windows. Sarah's heart pounded. "They're in there," Evan whispered. Lisa reached for her radio. "Cops are 10 minutes out." Sarah exhaled. "Then we don't have much time." Titan, Bruiser, and Ghost were with them, their bodies low to the ground, eyes locked on the warehouse. They sensed what was coming. Evan glanced at Sarah. "Ready?" She nodded. "Let's bring them home." The battle for freedom. The plan was simple: create a distraction and get the dogs out before the smugglers could react. Lisa and the volunteers moved toward the back entrance, while Sarah and Evan took the front. Evan pulled out a crowbar and jammed it against the lock. The door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit room filled with cages. Dozens of dogs. Some whimpered. Others barked, sensing salvation. Sarah's eyes burned with rage. "We have to move fast." Titan and Ghost rushed forward, sniffing the cages. Sarah and Evan worked quickly, breaking locks, opening doors. But just as they freed the last dog, a voice shouted, "Hey, what the hell?" Sarah spun around. Two men stood in the doorway, their faces twisted with anger. Evan stepped forward. "We're taking the dogs." One of the men sneered. "Like hell you are." Then he reached for something beneath his coat. A gun. Time slowed. Before the man could pull the trigger, a deep, earth-shaking growl filled the room. With terrifying speed, Titan lunged forward, knocking the man to the ground. The gun skidded across the floor. The other smuggler turned to run, only to be met by Bruiser's massive frame blocking the exit. Ghost stood in front of Sarah, his blue eyes burning with fury. And then sirens. Flashing lights filled the warehouse as police cars skidded to a stop outside. Officers stormed in, weapons drawn. It was over. A new dawn. The smugglers were arrested. The dogs were taken to safety. And Ranger? Evan knelt beside his German shepherd, tears slipping down his face. "I'm so sorry, boy." Ranger licked his hand, forgiving him instantly. Sarah watched, her heart swelling. They had won. As the sun began to rise, she looked at her sanctuary in the distance. There would always be battles. There would always be those who wished harm upon the helpless. But as long as she had breath in her body, she would fight. Because once upon a time, one hungry mother dog had come to her doorstep. And now, the sanctuary was home to miracles. Years had passed since that fateful night when Hope, the starving mother dog, first arrived at Sarah's doorstep with her helpless pups. What began as an act of kindness had transformed into a sanctuary, one that had saved hundreds of animals, faced threats, and survived storms both literal and metaphorical. Sarah watched, her heart swelling. They had won. As the sun began to rise, she looked at her sanctuary in the distance. There would always be battles. There would always be those who wished harm upon the helpless. But as long as she had breath in her body, she would fight. Because once upon a time, one hungry mother dog had come to her doorstep. And now, the sanctuary was home to miracles. Years had passed since that fateful night when Hope, the starving mother dog, first arrived at Sarah's doorstep with her helpless pups. What began as an act of kindness had transformed into a sanctuary, one that had saved hundreds of animals, faced threats, and survived storms both literal and metaphorical. Through it all, Sarah had remained steadfast, never wavering in her mission. But even she had never imagined the journey that lay ahead. Now, standing on the porch of her sanctuary, she watched as the sun set over the vast fields, Titan resting at her feet, Bruiser and Ghost playing with the younger rescues. Hope, now older but still full of life, lay beside her, eyes watching the horizon. Sarah sighed. The world was changing, and with it a new challenge was about to test her once more. A letter from the past. One evening, as Sarah sorted through the mail, she found an envelope with no return address. She frowned, carefully opening it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, with words scrawled in uneven handwriting. "We know what you did. You thought it was over. It's not. We're coming." Sarah's hands clenched around the letter. After shutting down the dog smuggling operation with Evan and Lisa, she had thought they had dismantled the last of that dark industry in the region. But this letter, this warning, proved otherwise. She took a deep breath, calling Lisa. "I think we have a problem." The final battle begins. Sarah, Lisa, and Evan met at the sanctuary that night. "Are you sure this is related to the smugglers?" Lisa asked, her expression serious. Sarah passed her the letter. Who else could it be? Evan, who had once been part of that dark world before turning against it, studied the paper. This isn't just a threat. It's a promise. Sarah's mind raced. She had too many animals depending on her. Too much to lose. "We need to be ready," she said. So they prepared. Cameras were installed around the property. Security lights were placed at every entrance. Neighbors and volunteers were informed to be on high alert. And most importantly, Titan, Bruiser, Ghost, and the other guardian dogs were ready. Then, on a cold, moonless night, it happened. The attack. It was past midnight when Titan's deep growl broke the silence. Sarah shot up in bed, her heart hammering. Then she heard movement outside. She grabbed a flashlight and rushed to the window. Shadows moved near the back fence. She didn't hesitate. "Titan, Bruiser, Ghost, let's go." The dogs bolted outside with her, their instincts already in overdrive. By the time she reached the yard, she saw them, 3 men, dressed in black, trying to cut through the fence. "Stop right there," Sarah shouted. One of the men turned, his face partially hidden beneath a hood. "We warned you." Then everything happened at once. Titan lunged first, his powerful body knocking one intruder off balance. Bruiser, the Rottweiler, charged next, his deep snarl echoing through the night. The men panicked. One pulled out a weapon, but before he could act, Ghost launched at him, his icy blue eyes filled with fury. The intruders had underestimated them. Within moments, the men were on the ground, scrambling to escape. Then, the sound of sirens. Lisa and Evan had already called the police. The men didn't get far. Justice had finally arrived. A new beginning. With the final remnants of the dog trafficking ring arrested, Sarah could finally breathe again. The sanctuary was safe. But more than that, it was thriving. Evan, who had once been lost in a world of crime, had become a full-time rescuer. Lisa continued to work tirelessly to protect animals. And Sarah? She stood in the middle of her sanctuary, watching as Hope, Titan, Ghost, and all the rescued dogs ran freely, knowing they would never suffer again. She knelt beside Hope, stroking her fur. "We did it, girl." Hope licked her hand, her eyes filled with the same love and trust she had shown Sarah all those years ago. This was home. This was where miracles happened. And no matter what challenges came next, Sarah knew one thing for certain. The sanctuary would always stand. Because once upon a time, a hungry mother dog had found her. And together, they had changed the world. The end.